But so in
Right.
in terms of we're talking about the potential for war with China, we have the story from Yahoo. So much at stake. PM's chilling warning on conflict with China. This Prime Minister Scott Morrison will call on the world leaders to stand in unison against the growing threat of China. On Wednesday, he will deliver a major foreign policy speech ahead of a trip to the United Kingdom, where he'll be a guest at a meeting of the world economic powers, including the U.S., Germany, and France. Bro, it sounds like war with China is seriously on the horizon. It's not just this, not just Australia being like, yo, it's happening. I mean, obviously China came back and they're like, that's rubbish. There's no war. The U.S. just dispatched its Pacific fleet across the Pacific in anticipation of Chinese rocket attacks. Well, right, but so the U.S. has their air fleet in two different bases, one in Japan, I think in Okinawa, I could be wrong, and one in Guam. And there was concern that
You're talking about the aircraft or the Navy?
It's the Air Force.
Oh, it's the Air Force.
Yeah. So they were worried that these Chinese rockets would just wipe out these bases instantly. They have no time to scramble.
It wouldn't just be the bases; it'd be the entire island. I mean, I've gone through those scenarios when I was in the Navy, and I mean, it basically comes down to like, at what time would they be destroying what facility, right? Okinawa's right there. It's
so,
right there.
but so what the U.S. has done is they've dispatched the fleet around the Pacific. So now there's like some bombs here, some planes there, and they straight up said, "Oh, it's so in anticipation of war with China, we will not be vulnerable to these attacks." We're seeing that. We're also seeing the Pentagon is buying up weapons specifically for naval and Pacific warfare, as opposed to Middle Eastern warfare like drone strikes and things like that. Seems like Thucydides' trap is a given, and they recognize it. Now, maybe the economic stuff was an attempt to stop it. Maybe this like NBA stuff was like, the more business we build up, the less likely there will be a war, and war is bad. Sounds like war is going to happen.
Yeah. So I'll put it this way: that is there a near-peer competitor that would be at the most, and when I say that, I mean another state actor which would have a comparable military to the United States that the U.S. could potentially go to war with? Number one would definitely be China, 100%. Right? The reason that I'm still, I'd bet against it, it's like I'd put it 60-40 right now, is because they are just making so much money off of us. Right? They're constantly making money off of us. They're making even more money now after the pandemic, which they certainly played to their own. I'm not one of those people who thinks the pandemic was a deliberate plot or anything like that by them. But I think it's something that once it hit, they realized how to spin everything in their favor, financially speaking. They're positioning themselves to be the major beneficiaries of the Great Reset. They're still in bed with all of our elites, with all the Western elites, and by and large have been financed and built up by Western elites. And they're winning the war. So here's right. They're essentially winning. So why would they? Why go hot? Right? Why shoot? And the only thing that I think that could potentially lead to that is if you see the actual party from the inside be threatened. If you see Xi Jinping feel that his rule is threatened, if you see him potentially weakened and by rivals, then does he make a play for Taiwan? Maybe
there's a bunch of protests breaking out across the country, which could threaten to destabilize the social order.
This is why I keep an eye on it.
Yeah. Well, so you were mentioning this a moment ago in the earlier segment, but just a minute ago, that these massive protests were breaking out in all across China. I mean, is that something you think could make the Chinese Communist Party fear their control over the country?
Potentially, but that's going to lead to internal crackdowns. That wouldn't be something that would, they would want to do some kind of like, external big, like wag the dog type approach to anything. And, Xi Jinping is starting to now get credit for essentially not, I wouldn't say the return of Hong Kong, but just the control of Hong Kong, right? They view this as a huge win. And if you look at those, the 6/4 anniversary. So the anniversary of Tiananmen Square is June 4th. And if you look at those images out of Victoria Park in Hong Kong, downtown Hong Kong, this has always been the spot where since 1989, the people of Hong Kong, particularly young people, particularly students, would go out every single June 4th night and hold a candlelight vigil there in Victoria Park. And so there's these montage photos people have put up on the internet where it shows that it's this huge thing and it's every year. And it sort of became this sort of hybrid dual meaning where it's in commemoration of Tiananmen Square, but it's also that, hey, we know you don't want us doing this after 1997, the handover, that, okay, we're part of Chinese sovereignty now under Beijing, but we are still going to do this because we are Hong Kong and we are free. Last year, it was incredibly diminished crowd. All of a sudden, you see this huge park, but it's only maybe 50% capacity. And then this last year, it's empty. It's completely empty.
You are going to see a lot of people, and I think you are, in the United States, moving from libertarian to authoritarian very, very quickly. With the Nickelodeon thing where the drag queen dancer is showing the red salute, the communist fist, and telling the kids to, this is a good thing, look at this, and they're like flashing on the screen. And just a lot of what's happening in this country, it's hyper polarization, right? So on my main channel,
plus anything with kids, anything involving
Right,
kids,
right, right.
You're tripping. You are tripping those. That's a primal red line, right?
But-
That's biological, spiritual, everything.
Yeah, the story of the dad and the mom in Texas fighting over custody of the kid who was, the mom said it was trans, the dad said wasn't. I mean, these are serious issues. I covered vaccine segregation on my main channel today because Democrats are increasingly pushing what is called vaccine segregation. So there's going to be a grand reopening of New York City where 70% of the tickets will go to people who are vaccinated, and then 30% to people who are unvaccinated will go to special segregated areas. Madison Square Garden's doing an event where you have to be fully vaccinated, so you have to have your 2 full doses. It has to be a few weeks after or whatever, then you can get in. Whereas red states are doing the exact opposite. So I bring this up just to tie it into what we're talking about with China and the expansion and possible war. China's extremely authoritarian. The authoritarian nature is allowing them just iron fist control of Hong Kong, right? No more protests.
Right.
The U.S. is being rocked and shattered by protest. So I think what's going to happen is you're going to see a lot of people who are just, I mean, I've already heard the conversations where they're like, well, freedom is for peacetime. You know, libertarianism, liberty is for peacetime. When you're in a time of war, that's when the rules go out the window. You've got the potential for war with China. And this is what a lot of people are saying. Because we're such a free-spirited country that allows a lot of liberty, it allows the rise of subversive groups who would weaken us at a time when we're facing potential war. China's not doing that. If China goes to war, their country's locked down and everyone falls in line. If the U.S. goes to war, it's just we're gonna depart.
There's also a huge dichotomy there as well. You talk to, we talked about millennials earlier, right? I don't know how many I'd love to actually pull up the millennial home ownership numbers. Well, we all know it's terrible. We all know it's really bottomed out. But how many millennial homeowners are flying, American flags in front of their houses, or even renters? Right, and it's going to be, I don't know if there's any studies on this, but my guess is that would be quite a lot less than their parents, right? In China, it's the exact opposite. The generation that you are seeing come up now in China are 10 times more hyper nationalistic than any that has preceded them, potentially since the communist, the communist cultural revolution of the 1960s.
Was there like a noticeable change in the Chinese population after Tiananmen Square? And because maybe you can explain a little bit about how many people died.
It would be after the great the one-child policy is when you see the noticeable shift. It's like a plateau, just drops off.
Part of me would love to see a simulation of what these leftists would experience should China win the economic war and any potential hot conflict.
Can we send them there?
Yeah.
It's not it's but they wouldn't live.
Every Baizuo can just go right over.
And for those that aren't familiar, it means white left. It's their word for SJW. But no. If the U.S. loses this economic conflict, this trade war, the economic war, or even the Cold War or the hot war, whatever it becomes, they're not going to live anywhere near as good as the people of China will live. So we can say like, oh, we'll send them to China. Well, I mean, Chinese cities, they have political problems. There's authoritarianism, but the people still live in city conditions. If we go to war and we lose that war, it's like then you live at the whims of your
I see what you're saying, right?
Yeah, they're going to be living like POWs. They're going to be living.
Your ability to protest, that's gone out the window, right? Your blog, your social media accounts, your Tumblrs, your whatever it is where you're going. And the reason I mentioned Tumblr is because that's it's like oversharing, right? It's overfree. It's who can say the most taboo thing, who can push the most buttons. That's gone. That's going overnight.
You're gonna start to make people support the CCP.
I know, right?
Careful.
They're gonna have these. I love it. There's this meme where these leftists are
I'll tell you what they think about Christianity next.
No,
there's this meme where the leftists, like the Bernie people, are like, we should put the 1% in gulags, make them break rocks for a few months so they know what hard work is like. It's like, bro, you guys don't do hard work at all. Like, I think if what they don't realize is that the things they're advocating for would put them in gulags breaking rocks so they can learn the value of hard work. They're not going to go to the guy who's like working at a steel mill. They're not going to go to the guy who's a construction worker. They're just going to be like, keep working, and they're going to be like, okay. They're going to go to the intelligentsia, the college academic kids, these activists, and they're going to be they're the problem. Whenever these takeovers happen, they immediately try and purge the intelligentsia who made the revolutions happen.
100%. Yeah, those people are dangerous. They're subversive.
Right.
There's a reason that we don't talk about the Mensheviks anymore.
Yeah.
Everyone knows what happens to the Mensheviks.
So, but ultimately, I bring this up because it's like if war is inevitable, our greatest weakness is our internal conflict. I mean, there are already people who have been super chatting us saying things like they think it's China's plan to promote these leftist anti-American ideas.
Well, sure.
To teach anti-American history lessons, to claim the country is awful. What happens then if there's complete demoralization? And then a Chinese boat crashes on the shores of Santa Monica and a bunch of soldiers walk out and they're like, we're here to liberate you from the oppressive, racist white people.
Paul Wolfowitz, right? We'll be greeted as liberators.
Exactly.
Well, here's the thing, though. When we sort of talked about this the other day, the people who would bow to the Chinese government aren't really the people who would have been much of a threat had they put up a fight anyway.
So there is a gun behind every blade of grass.
Yeah, exactly. What's the name of the Chinese army?
The Red Army?
No, the official name.
What is it?
The People's Liberation Army. You see, they've already thought of this.
Name.
They've already thought this through.
But if we get to the point where, we're already seeing our embassies fly the flags of Black Lives Matter, we're seeing children's show fly the red salute. The CCP members perform the red salute when they're, being brought into the party or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to come here and be like, no, we agree with you. We're the same. They're going to be like, they're going to have the flags with the fist on it. And then the leftists are going to be like, oh, this is a good thing. And they're going to say, we're here to liberate you from the evil white supremacists. And you're going to have a lot of people being like, awesome.
And then the Chinese Communist Party will go through
every
every piece of social media you've ever posted, including all the people that they think are on their side. Look at all their. If there's one thing that got said out of, they'll be in a
not even
gulag.
that. It's not even that. They'd look at it and say who's useful and who's not.
Yeah.
Right. If you're of no use to us, if you can't be put to work, if you're not in STEM fields or producing something of value, if you're not an actual worker, then you're just get out of here. You're done. Go sit and be, assume your consumption bubble, sit in your pod, eat your bugs, right? That's you. That's your job.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.